You're not even in your basement bunker this time.
Oh, no.
Okay, are we close? Can I call the meeting to order?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Call the meeting to order. I want to acknowledge that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Upper Similkameen Indian Band. Adoption of the agenda. Councillor McLean, second Councillor Willis. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And next one is adoption of the minutes from January 17, 2022, regular meeting of council. So moved, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Willis, Councillor McLean, seconded. Any errors or omissions? All in favor? Carried, thank you. And January 26th, special meeting of council minutes. Motion to adopt.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Gould, seconder. Councillor McLean, errors or omissions? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Which brings us down to petitions and delegations, and I'll hand it right over to you, Jim.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, council staff, thank you for having me. I'm here to talk about the 2022-2026 Regional District of Okanagan Similkameen budget. It is a first reading, and if you can see me, this pile of paper to my left, that is the budget for draft or adoption 2, which the board will see on the 17th. It's just over 600 pages, and if I may, I'd like to share my PowerPoint presentation that I have.
It's all yours.
Thank you.
Should work. We're hoping.
It's only on this one.
How come you're frozen?
I asked him to get rid of one.
There you go. Perfect.
I'm trying to get it to work here. Bear with me. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Oh, there we go. We got something happening.
Something happened, but I didn't. It's not what I wanted.
No.
600-page budget.
You just have to go to PowerPoint now, Jim.
Can you see this?
Yeah, we can see your Teams page, so
Yeah, you just have to
I
go
think you
to-
just have to go to PowerPoint.
Can you see the PowerPoint?
No, not the
Yeah.
PowerPoint yet.
Go select.
Okay. Because it says here, stop presenting.
Do you have an extended screen? Is that?
I've got two screens, but they're both up there showing. I'll try something else.
Okay. Bear with us, folks.
I have the Jeopardy, Jim.
There, we got a tent.
You got a tent?
You have a
Okay,
tent.
so let me see if I can make the tent work for me.
We'll just blame James because he keeps
Can you
freezing up.
see that? Can you-
Yeah, there we go. Now we're good.
It's not what I really wanted, but it's gonna have to do.
Okay.
It's on my 3-inch screen, but I can make it work. Okay, this is as good as it gets.
Okay.
You can see the screen?
A little bit. It's okay. We can follow around in our agendas, Jim.
Okay, I'll apologize for this because this shouldn't be happening. I
That's
don't know
okay.
what's going on.
It's probably us.
Okay, so what, this is, starts off with what a regional district is and what the conundrum between regional districts and municipalities. There's a legislation that the Lieutenant Governor created regional districts through a letters patent, much similar to any other local government municipalities. We, as a regional district, have 9 electoral areas, 6 municipalities. There's 19 members on the board. Their electoral areas, members there are elected, and the municipal side, they are appointed by the council. So with that, just want to talk about what the regional district budget is. The provincial government issues or charges us a 5.25% administration fee on top of what we ask for the surveyor taxes to collect on our behalf, but only for the rural areas. I'm estimating for 2022 that 5.25% will be over $800,000. Regional districts that do not tax municipalities, we ask municipalities how much, we tell them how much we need, and the municipalities tax on our behalf and then turn over the funds to us. Some regional district services are legislative, such as solid waste management plans, emergency 911, telecommunications. Most regional district services are by choice. Those that electoral areas have ask the regional district through a referendum for their taxpayers to start the service, and then we tax from there. The surveyor taxes, as I stated, the property is not located in the city, town, and municipalities. That means it would be a rural area. Taxes that are controlled by are not controlled by the board, yet they are on the surveyor taxes invoice or bill: school, policing, roads, municipal finance authority, BCI assessment. And these are services that are in our budget, we tax, but the board has zero control over them. So we're told by these 4 areas, this is what you must tax, and that's what we do. The budget structure, like a regional district, is different than municipalities. Municipalities usually have 3 to 5 budgets. We have 156. Each service is its own budget. So that this is because each separate budget allows us to tax the specific people who get the benefit of the budget, the service. Budget process was launched in October 2021. There's a new baseline budget now that we started. Up until 2021, we had an operating budget that also included a capital budget. So there was never a comparison from one year to another because the capital component just went up and down like a yo-yo. If there's a lot of capital projects in the service, the budget seemed higher. If there isn't, then it seemed lower. So now with 2022 budget, there's a capital component and a financial and an operational component. The capital component has no taxes in the budget. It was funded at one point with taxes. It's now funded with reserves, the donations, grants, and gas tax funding. The budget workshop was held, 2 of them, November 5th and 9th, where the board looked at the draft budget and determined what was acceptable and was not. These are the services that the regional district provides. Regional services where the municipalities and electoral areas both take part in, and these are the heritage as an example: 911, corporate facilities, finance, etc. Continuation of regional services, because there's quite a few. Legislative services, illegal dumping is just a number. Regional trails, regional transit. The other services are rural services. Rural services are more likely to be used by the electoral areas, and there's shared services. One of the examples I use for shared services is the Keremeus Fire Department, where Keremeus pays for a service, but also 2 other electoral areas pay. And then there's local services where mostly it'd be water or sewer, where it's very specific to one region. So the budget process, it's a 5-year financial plan. There's a request made for new add-ons from one year to another. And that 5-year plan is reviewed during the workshops, and the board determines what goes forward or not. So with that, the following budget workshop and draft budget is created and brought to the board, as I stated. This is something that you may find interesting because at this point it takes over just for your area. So the 2022 for the Town of Princeton comprised 2.61% of the total assets for the regional districts, and as you know, it's the assessments. As you know, it's the assessments that determine your portion of the service costs. So you actually went down from 2.61, it was at 2.78. So the Town of Princeton overall assessment went up 20.78%. However, the average is 28.89% throughout the region. So that means for the 2022 budget, the town of Princeton will bear a lower overall tax burden for the services that Princeton participates in. And you'll see the benefit of that in a few minutes. So the administrative overhead, this is an area where there's been a major concern or a concern by some of the directors of fairness. And administrative overhead, as far as the regional district is concerned, is the support costs for the services that are provided. So it doesn't include the wages for, and as stated here, human resources, legislative services, finance, corporate services, and information services. It includes only the support costs. And an example would be for information services, at the IT department, we need the computers to keep the doors open. So we have, the IT department has to pay for licenses, hardware, software. So that's what I would call the support costs. And this next slide just shows the different costs, how the overhead is calculated. You will see that information services has got a huge material increase, and the biggest single reason is that the licensing costs have increased dramatically, and we need an additional hardware and software to be modern and keep the doors open, as I stated. Program change requests. So any new charges that happen between 2021 and 22, the board has to authorize these requests. The first request that would come to the board would be the grant and aids. A list of the grant and aid requests would go to the board, and they get to, at the very first budget workshop. The board determines what areas or which areas that they're concerned that they need to fund. And this shows the list of which ones were accepted and which were not. The biggest single grant and aid request that was approved this year is the food hub, which the city, the town or district, sorry, of Similkameen requested, and it is currently in the budget. Starting in 2022, the managers had to do a detailed business plan if they wanted a service level increase or a FTE increase. So these are the FTEs that and the service level increases that the board reviewed. What you don't see is the business plan. This is just a summary. So the business plan details why the ask is there. It shows the 5-year impact so that there's no more surprises where it's the dollars go into the first year and all of a sudden when it comes to authorizing budgets in prior years, it jumps. So these are just some of the FTEs and service level requests that the board has authorized. This one here, this one specifically is for parks. Now, some of these have changed. This was at first reading. The board's going to see a new budget on February 17th, and there's going to be some changes. This is for an engineering supervisor, mainly and mostly for looking at capital projects. And these were administrative assistance to legislative services. What I thought in each area for the jurisdictions, you may be interested in the capital component of the budget that ultimately at one point or other, the taxpayers that live in the town of Princeton paid for. So this one here is for the telecommunications. And again, just want to state that at one point it was taxed. None of these capital projects that I'm going to show are being taxed again. It is being funded either by grants, reserves, donations, and gas tax. This one here is different trails, and these are the different projects throughout for the regional trails. And this one here is solid waste management. And this is a legislative service that all must participate in. And one thing that I thought everyone would be interested in to see the consistency between budgets, 2021 and 2022. There are some anomalies in here in that there is $7.2 million are being carried forward from last year to this year for whatever reason, COVID, etc. And the one major project that's in this area is the composting, $8 million for a composting project, and that's being funded from a provincial grant. So the Town of Princeton tax requisition. So the tax requisition for the Town of Princeton overall will contribute $106,528 in taxes. The tax requisition has decreased $709,000 $93 or 0.74%. Once you take the non-market increase into consideration, it's actually a decrease of 3.76%. A lot of that is simply because other areas have taken on a higher burden. One example is the electoral area A, where their total assessment increased by 49%, and the average house increased by 52%. So if you actually look at area A's tax requisition, you'll see a material increase in there, not because they have additional services, just because they're paying more of the overall burden. One of the other areas that I thought you'd be interested in is where are there material increases or decreases in your tax requisitions. Overall, you've got a decrease, but this area, this sheet here shows the different increases in material changes. A good example is emergency call system, 0400 department. There's actually an increase in the budget for the central fire dispatch of $110,000 and the central Okanagan regional district of $40,000. However, because of the assessment changes in overall, you actually have a decrease of $2,600 in there. And there's only a small number of material changes in your budget tax requisition. This is the tax requisition for your area, and it shows specifically all of the different services that you do participate in, and you can see that 0.74 decrease that I stated earlier. This is just a comparison of the tax requisitions by municipality. And this one here is comparison by electoral area. And as you can see, electoral area for A is a large increase of 10.65%. It's been shaved a little bit on for that second reading, and this is also not written in stone. The budget is at first reading, it's going to second, there's going to be some changes there, and the board can make changes right up until adoption, just like in any other budget. And this is just an average cost, just a comparison for houses between 500,000 and $1 million. This is just simply to see which area is paying the majority of the costs. And this is something that is new, that I've been using for a long time, but it's new to this regional district. Just the cost per capita. As you can see, Princeton actually has the lowest cost per capita, and with electoral area E having the highest. This is just a simple pie. I think a lot of the councils like to use that, like the colors. I can't see them, but here they look good. And this is where, if you want to have more information or update on the budget, these are the three areas that you can access them. There's actually some tapes of all the different areas. If you're interested in the other electoral areas and municipalities, to see how what we have to say about them. But this is something that, as the board changes the budget, these will be updated. And that's all I have. If you have any questions, I would be pleased to answer them.
Does anybody have any questions for Jim? Councillor McLean.
Just a comment, Jim. To provide an intelligent assessment of that amount of information in that short a time, you should be commended. That was a great job as far as I was concerned.
Darn right.
I didn't want to bore you.
Well,
You did.
you didn't. Jim, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for what you've done over the last year. I know you came into this last year just before the budget, and I think you've done an amazing job coming up with this budget and the previous budget. Councillor Gould has a question.
I was just wondering, Jim, when the grant and aids are reviewed for regional district?
Strategic, when we did the November stuff.
So when is the deadlines for the applications for grant and aid requests?
Jim, can you explain the grant and aids? Because there's two different types of grant and aids for the regional district. Can you explain that for my council?
There are two different grant dates. One of them is a formal one where everyone pays. There is a deadline. I believe it's early October, so that I can put it into the budget. All of the grant and aid applications are then given to the board and analyzed to see if they qualify. There is a qualification factor. Right now, you could only get a grant and aid for 2 2 years, and it shouldn't be to support the total operation costs. It's a percentage of the operational costs. Then the board determines if they make it or not, if it's a yes or no. They will not get the money until adoption. Right after adoption, we cut the checks. The other aid is by electoral areas specific to each area, and in that case, the director chooses if it's yes or no, but it has to meet a certain criteria. The board is going to be getting a new policy, a recommendation for the grant and aid policy, so that there's more of a consistency. Not if that answers.
Yep, it does.
Thanks, Jim. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I want to thank you again, Jim. Maybe next time we'll get to do this in person.
I would like that. 14 years ago, I did do it in person.
Perfect. Okay, have a good night, Jim.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. How do I do this? And I can bring that off now, right?
Do you want that up? Okay.
No, I just gotta figure out how to close that. There we go. Am I off, James? Okay. So it doesn't look good. Okay. And just a point that was on there, you saw the grant and aids, there's one there for $50,000 to a food hub. That is completely dependent on them getting, it's a huge grant from the provincial government, so it's pretty up in the air whether or not that grant's gonna go through. So there's not, just over 9,000 guaranteed, and the rest is a big maybe at this point, so.
What was the waste, the big waste?
Oh, that has nothing to do with us. That's the Campbell Mountain. So the regional districts got to do something about their composting. So they're creating too much methane in their landfill. So they're under review, and so they purchased a piece of property across the road from Campbell Mountain, and now they're having difficulties getting it out of the ALR to be able to turn it into a compost facility. Because they need to be able to separate all their green waste so that they can get their methane levels down.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to 6. Staff report 6.1, Upper Similkameen Indian Band, USIB request net zero waste Eastgate. Is that Carrie or Lyle going to speak to that?
Probably both, but
Okay.
I can start it off. I know that both Carrie and I have reviewed the report. The one thing that I noticed right off the bat was there was a number of items that were out of compliance, and a lot of them were simple admin items that should have been easy for them to comply with. And it did kind of raise a few flags for me that that if they can't comply with the simple things, that it begs the question, what else is missing? So I don't know if Carrie wanted to add to that.
I can just go back to, we received a request from Upper Similkameen Indian Band to formally rescind council's letter of support and to provide a contact name, someone that can work with USIB's resource team or natural resource team. And when we took it to council on January 17th, council asked us to investigate it and come back with the information. So I've attached to this report the original report that was done, what year was that? Back in 2019. And then I've also included the 2 letters we received, one from the regional district and one from Net Zero requesting the original request for letter of support. And then we just recently received the report from the ministry showing that they are in fact getting a warning and that they have been in non-compliance in a number of things. So today, council or staff are recommending to council that they rescind the letter of support to Net Zero Waste as requested by the Upper Similkameen Indian Band, and it's due to Net Zero Waste non-compliance with the organic recycling regulation under the Environmental Management Act. We are also suggesting that Ed Atkinson, Manager of Protective Services, be the contact with Upper Similkameen Indian Band's Natural Resource Team.
Comments or questions? Councillor McLean.
Could you explain the purpose of a letter of support?
It was for funding, for them to receive funding provincial, to go after a provincial grant.
So did they receive the funding?
That I don't know.
I was told by the deputy minister that there's still dependent, what did he say? A lot is going to be dependent upon what that report came out and said. So I think we'd be within our rights to withdraw that support at this time. I think if you've had a chance to read the report thoroughly, like the CAO has said, the infractions seem to be very basic operational infractions. There's comments in here from the person on site that protocols weren't followed when the hogs were initially brought in. There was a time period that was lapsed where they were not compliant, and whatnot. So, in the future, if they're able to get their house in order, I don't see why we couldn't work with them on something. But at this point, I'm not comfortable supporting them any further, just based on the fact that they just couldn't get the very basics under control.
So staff must believe that it's a pretty substantial effort to get them back into compliance.
Yeah,
My point being that we couldn't wait to withdraw our thing to see if they could comply. We would just withdraw it. Then if they were able to come into compliance, then we'll reissue it again.
if they were to ask, we could reconsider it at that point. The province is going to be following up in the spring on this file. They're going to be doing monitoring of leachates. They're going to be looking at other issues that are on there, including the pad and what's underneath the pad and everything. So there's going to be a substantial investigation ongoing on this, from what I'm to understand from the ministry staff. Carrie?
Part of the Upper Similkameen Indian Band's request was to formally rescind it, and it also said until the facility can demonstrate it is working in compliance with BC environmental regulations. And that is part of the request. Now, if council feels comfortable amending the recommendation to add that to the top, then we can certainly do
So
that.
with that wording, we wouldn't have to reissue it again. It would go back into effect once they came into compliance.
We can certainly add that, yes.
I would so move anyway.
Okay, as amended?
Did I read there was been no fines? There was just warnings?
We don't know that.
It's still being reviewed.
It's still being under
They're still
review. There could still be fines if they're not.
We could rescind it until.
Well, they were given timelines as to when they had to come into compliance, and I haven't heard back if I don't know if they've had all their time yet to come into compliance, but.
They do list on the front page what some of the fines could be.
Yeah, but there has been none though, right? As of yet.
No, they have a time, they had a period to appeal, and then they have a period to come into compliance.
Yeah.
The way that wording read, we wouldn't have to go through the whole process again. Once they came into compliance, or
Yeah, I like
it would be back in effect.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, so,
I would second that
Okay.
amended motion.
could somebody read the amended motion?
Formally rescind the town's letter of support for this operator until the facility can demonstrate it is working in compliance with BC environmental regulations.
That's what I said, wasn't it?
Yes.
Excellent,
That's
thank
what
you.
you said yes to what Carrie said too.
And the second part of that motion is Ed Atkinson, Manager
Yes.
Protective Services for the Town of Princeton, be the contact person who can receive updates from the USIB Natural Resource Team, and responsible, and may be invited to join a stewardship working group or otherwise contribute to responsible management of facility, including oversight and monitoring in collaboration with the Ministry of Environment. So that was Councillor McLean, seconded Councillor Gould. Any further comments or questions? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. 6.2, facade improvement grant update. Carrie, since
Mark
you
is
let Mark
here.
have the night off.
So we wanted just to provide council with an update on the business facade improvement grant program. We had 2 applications, both being on Vermilion Avenue, sagebrush physiotherapy, and the chiropractor office beside us. Sagebrush physiotherapy has completed their work, and we've included some pictures so that council can see it. And the chiropractor is still working on his, and hopefully we'll have his done, finished soon.
They both look great.
They do. Absolutely.
So this is just a receive and file, or receive for information? Does anybody have any questions or comments? Councilor
Only
McLean?
that as public as we can make this, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm not real familiar with the other one, but the amazing how the chiropractor's office is a real addition to the community kind of thing. And just as public as we can make it in terms of when we do this again, that people take advantage of it, because it's a real benefit for the town, but it's also a pretty good benefit for the people that are taking advantage of it.
Absolutely. Me and Mark were talking about that today, so we're gonna put it out in the paper and sort of do a blitz of it again and get the information out there.
Perfect. Councilor Gould?
Sorry, do we have the same amount in this year's budget?
Yes.
20,000?
Yeah.
So for the 10,000 that wasn't used, do we just,
It doesn't carry over.
it doesn't carry over, okay.
Sorry?
Only 10,000 was used, so
Of last
10,000.
So we make it 30 this year?
It doesn't carry over, no.
No, we didn't carry it over.
Who said that?
What was left in the budget?
Have we had any more applications?
No. We had a couple interested, but they never followed through.
Yeah, I think both companies did a good job.
Yeah, looks great. Okay.
It would be, excuse me, but it would be something to investigate, wouldn't it, to be able to talk about this? If we're gonna set aside 20,000 a year, if you don't use 10,000 one year, and
Yeah.
you have 3, say, well, what would it be, 6 applicants or something? It might be something to look
To look
at
for.
in the future.
I think the flood took it this year.
Yeah.
And
Unfortunately.
if there's more applicants in the future, we can always add more money in next year's budget.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, we have a recommendation that we receive this as information only. Councilor
make that.
Gould, Councilor Willis. Any other questions? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Just an update, George is home.
Yay, welcome
Yes.
home.
Tired, swollen, and hungry, he said. Welcome home, George. Water supply, well number 1 and 2, replacement. Jared, hand it over to you.
All right. I asked that council authorize staff to submit an application for grant funding for a new well facility at Memorial Park.
Can you speak up a
Do
little
you
bit?
need a
Can you,
microphone?
can you speak it up a little bit? He's got a mic. He just,
Oh, okay.
Is it,
no, we just can't hear you. The mic, we don't hear the mics. We just hear it, yeah.
everyone else will hear me?
Everybody else hears it.
So as we all know, Memorial Park was affected by the November flood event. Since then, we've been getting positive coliform results from our Caro sampling. We've done 2 rounds of disinfection, and we are still getting these results. So it's pointing us in the direction that the aquifer could be compromised, not so much contaminated, but the flow through the ground is a little bit different, allowing like river water to have influence to the wells. So in 2011, we had a Goody assessment done. This is groundwater under the direct influence of the river. From this study, it was determined that this area was at low risk from being influenced by the river. This event has kind of kiboshed that. Now we're doing a GARP assessment. It's kind of just a spin-off from a Goody, so it's groundwater at risk of containing pathogens. So this, it's not just a river, so it looks at surface water contamination as well. So this study will tell us for sure what's happening and if this is going to be a full GARP or virus only. If it's virus only, the minimum level that we'll need to do is a chlorine contact time system. And this was actually brought to our attention prior to 2012. I'm not sure the exact date, but this has supposed to be done for a while now. So this is going to be a must, regardless of the outcome. And this project, that'd be about $1 million project to do this, and that's upgrade. Like it's not. That's no upgrades to the existing 30 to 50-year-old infrastructure that's there. If it's determined that we need another source of treatment, that's a potential another $1 million project roughly. And that again, that's with no upgrades to the current infrastructure. So with those two and upgrades that will probably need to be done with those two projects, you're looking, I'm guessing, like $3 million. We haven't really determined what upgrades would be needed at the time, but just those other two. So with that being said, instead of spending roughly $3 million on old infrastructure, I'm asking that maybe we can put a new facility in, 2 new wells and a facility up out of the floodplain and just in a more safe zone, up to date.
Okay. Does anybody have questions of Jared? Nope. Councillor McLean?
Well, I'm just presuming that we would do a multiple bunch of testing prior to drilling, you know, prior to testing and then drilling in other wells, right?
Yes, that's correct. So with this, that project would be around $4.5 million. That's a Class D estimate. That's on the high side. But drilling, testing, and all that kind of stuff would be included with that.
I'm sorry, that included the wells, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Gould?
And we would still need to do this treatment, this UV treatment, regardless of whether it's new wells or old wells?
Potentially. Moving the wells a little bit further away, we gain a little bit of natural filtration through the ground. So it's kind of dependent on what we find when we drill the new wells.
And it's ultimately Interior Health's decision, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, pretty much.
So it's 4.5 million for 2 new wells and a new system versus 3 million to upgrade 2 old wells.
Right.
And still have it in a possibly compromisable location again.
Exactly. It will still be in the
Flood.
floodplain. And
Councillor Willis?
And this money is coming from,
so this money would be from the $7 million borrowing that was in the 2021 budget there. In the shuffling around, I've been able to free up like $1.5 million from the trunk main job project that was on the north side.
none of this is caused by the flooding though? Is like,
This
none of
is,
it covered?
it is, here, James?
Yeah, so, thank you. So, specific to this project, and specific to this grant, correct me if I'm wrong, Jared, but it's a requirement of this grant that the municipality contribute their share,
Yeah.
based on that. However, this, has been identified in the financial plan also as being an excellent, request of the Emergency Management British Columbia through the Disaster Financial Assistance Program. So, staff right now is in progress of forming what they call the recovery plan. And this project, specifically the entire lump sum, the 3.5 to 4.5 million, will be part of that recovery plan. And they fund at 80%. So we're actually going after 2 funding streams for this project. One is through the Investing in Infrastructure Canada program, and the other will be through DFA, through Emergency Management BC. So whichever one comes first, we can then make a decision and present that to council on which direction we're going.
And we have ministry support to apply for these grants, right? Like they're the ones who put us on to, was it the Infrastructure for Canada one? Is that the one that they sent us?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, so in conversations with the Minister of Municipal Affairs, she directed her staff to reach out to us to help us get this grant going. And And then we've also been in talks with EMBC to try to get this other one going. So we're trying to get any funding that's available for it to offset the cost and bring it down as low as we can for ourselves. The Interior Health representative is 100% in support of us moving it, and said that she would even put a letter of support into our application moving forward.
So
Yeah.
it's important that it may also be a cumulative grant. So our portion may be able to be 80% covered by DFA, so it might be in conjunction as well.
I can't see
We
it.
do a little bit more research on that, but it's a possibility.
And maybe the possibility is, well, we have to be, if we're committing to it, we have to be prepared to pay for it if we don't get any of these funding streams.
Yeah, we'll have to figure that out if we,
We can't start it.
no. Did you?
So could you, first of all, the program that you're talking about to bring the old wells into line, what are you talking about? What is that? What's the process?
Don't quite understand your question.
So the contact time would be piping.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know, in the old days, we just chlorinated.
Right.
Well, this isn't chlorination, is it?
Well, see, we do chlorinate at this time, but,
I mean, you talked about $1 million process or whatever
Yeah.
for each well, right? So what is that process?
so that process is, that's for the contact time. Right now, we don't have contact time, so what that means is the water that's pumped out of the wells has to have a certain amount of time in contact with the chlorine to be able to be deemed, disinfected.
Right.
Stations these days, the wells pump into an underground chamber with baffle systems, so the water gets sloshed around and it gets contact time that way. So as of right now, we just pump it straight through.
Yeah, because what I remember in the past was some places had some kind of a electric process or something that water passed through and it sterilized it or whatever it did to it. I thought perhaps that's what you were talking about.
Right, that is one of the other options. That was the other option I was saying after. That's a second kind of treatment.
Do you know with that process whether chlorine is still added?
Yes,
Oh, it
yeah,
is,
we'd
okay.
still need both.
So the last question is, when you were talking about the money and the funding and that, did that include both the revamping of the old wells and the new wells?
Well, it's listed in the financial plan as well refurbishment. So if it's more cost effective to build new wells, then we'll go in that direction. If it's more cost effective to refurbish the old wells, we'll go with that direction. It leaves it open at this point because I don't believe infrastructure has that kind of information yet.
So it would be one or the other? Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, perfect, thank you.
So just so you guys understand, Merritt has been able to get their water system back up and running because of the contact time and a UV system on it. So they've been able to get the okay from Interior Health before us because they have all this stuff in place and we don't. So that's our big drawback right now is we don't have that in place. And we might be able to get by if we get enough, 120 days clear, then we might get by. But Interior Health's gonna be on us every day to watch, make sure that we've got a plan in place and that this is a short-term thing, and then we have to get something done. So there's no real getting around this. We're gonna have to do something, and it's not gonna be later, it has to be sooner, or Interior Health is not gonna lift our boil water advisory on us.
Merit's system was in before the flood, though. It wasn't in
Yeah, they already
because
had
of the
it.
flood.
Yeah, they already,
Behind the times.
Yeah.
we are behind the times, so.
Do we have any idea of the time frame of each?
No, unfortunately, we never.
Not at this
I
time.
don't mean what we have to wait for the funding and all that. If we got the funding and got everything in place, are we talking about like a couple month kind of project or?
Potentially, it's quite a big project,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay, thank you.
It would be considered an emergency project, so we could probably speed up a little bit of the purchasing side of it, but there'd still be some tendering we'd have to do. It's very specific, the type of company that can do this, so.
Did staff have strong? Did staff have a recommendation on the two?
My recommendation would be the new system,
New wells?
new wells.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so we have a staff recommendation that council authorize staff to submit an application for grant funding for project water supply well number 1 and number 2 replacement through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program Environmental Quality, and that council supports the project and commits its share of 1.21 million of the project, as well as the cost overruns paid by the $7 million infrastructure upgrade borrowing set out in the 2021 financial plan. Councilor McLean? Councilor Willis? Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Submit your grant, Jared. Council reports. Let's go with Councilor McLean because he's all by himself over there.
You knew what I'd be reporting on. We're getting awful close. We've had some really good attendance. We had minor hockey come out to games, 10-3 and that, and also put on a little game at halftime, and pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So other than that, everything seems to be going fine, and looking forward to the next week or so.
Excellent. I'll jump over to you, Councilor Willis.
I gotta say the kids love that game. Yeah, no, other than, what's that?
We want to have them.
I know, yeah. Other than that, and that's my report.
Councilor Gould. Okay. My report is we've been working, trying to secure some sort of interim housing. Unfortunately, we had some units kind of on hold for us. Those units have slipped away from us. They've gone to somewhere else now. Commitment from the provincial government, as they have no mandate at this time to provide the type of housing we're looking for. I've had a pretty frank discussion with EMBC about it, and I'm now having a frank discussion with the Red Cross, who is the contractor through the province to supply ESS services. ESS services were taken away from municipalities and contracted out to the Red Cross. The Red Cross is now in a recovery mode. So I don't know what that actually means, but right now we still have residents throughout the Okanagan. We have them throughout the Lower Mainland. They're everywhere. Area H residents were part of our housing plan, and they're also scattered. I'm not happy about it. Continuing to try to drive this home. I've had a meeting with, last week I had a meeting with a bunch of mayors and the Minister of Municipal Affairs, and Mayor Brown brought it up with Mayor, push the point home that we cannot, as a community, recover unless our community is all at home. And it is their responsibility as the senior government to do that, and to help us with that. That being said, the $5 billion that the federal government has given to the province is not strings unattached, sort of to say. So there's a committee, and they're working through it, and they're trying to figure out where that $5 billion is going to go. The province is trying to fast track some of that money, but it's not getting out there. We're not asking for a lot of money. We're asking for, really, I think it's like less than a percentage of the overall funding to even come up with, repairs to our community and housing. I don't want to say I'm losing hope, but I'm becoming more and more frustrated by the inability to supply housing to our residents. There's a number of residents that are no longer receiving support from the Red Cross. And those people aren't at home, that means they've just given up on Ross? And we're trying to figure out what that information sharing between the municipality and Red Cross is working on that. Information sharing between the Red Cross and the province it's a weird situation. We have a contractor that doesn't want to work with the contractors. The people that own the contract. So it's frustrating. We're still moving ahead on everything else. Staff is still working on recovery. Maureen and Ed are still working on trying to get everything sorted out there. We've got requisition funding.
It came through today.
Yeah, so that's a recovery
Manager, Recovery Center Manager.
center manager. So that person will help coordinate some of these things that we're having issues with. Try to get more information going. There's a lot of bureaucracy between us and getting things done, and that's the holdup. But for the most part, the province is working with us. It's just a lack of funding available to the province right now to help us move forward with things. And I think once they can free up that $5 billion, we'll start to see more things happen. But right now, we don't know where that's going to end up. The federal government has a lot of strings attached, so it's not great. Barb and then you.
I heard that there's people that are still under the care of the Red Cross, that their funding is ending soon, like next month.
We don't know. So Red Cross goes like,
Is there a place that they can be referred to, like, is emergency recovery and everything?
well, we'll work on that. We're continuing to work on that. The Red Cross seems to be relatively hanging when they have a deadline. That's the deadline that they will fund till, and they won't tell you what the plan is after that. We had people waiting weekly, not knowing what their housing situation was when the Red Cross was in the early days of the CSS stuff. And then their contract ended, their initial contract had ended at the end of January. They left everybody hanging whether or not they still had a place to live after that. It's frustrating as HE double hockey sticks because we don't know what to do, and we're out of the loop because we no longer have contact with our evacuees. So we did get funding for a little while to make those phone calls and try to reach out. We were duplicating the services that we thought the Red Cross was supposed to be doing. Found out the Red Cross wasn't doing any of those services, so we don't really know what they are and aren't doing. Councilor McLean.
I heard the part that you mentioned about not much can be done until they figure out the $5 billion in that, but I was wondering if you've had any luck with the ministry in terms of facilities like Silvercrest or whatever.
So that's BC Housing. They're looking at what it's going to cost to repair those facilities.
I know you were hoping that they not only repair, but perhaps
Yeah,
enhance some of it.
they're, the one building sustained some pretty heavy losses. The other building, because of its age, the type of insulation and whatnot, they're really looking at it, so. We haven't talked much to BC Housing as of late. They're doing their thing. Most of our contact right now is with EMBC, and EMBC's been talking about bringing BC Housing into our conversations to try to figure out something with housing, but it hasn't happened. I had a meeting with the MLA today, and he explained to me that there is no government agency in British Columbia who is responsible for recovery. We have Emergency Management BC that's responsible for the emergency, and then after that, nobody is technically responsible for recovery. And that seems to be the big issue. It was their issue in Grand Forks when they were trying to recover, and it's continued to be an issue now. So this is something that we're all hammering home. Every municipality that's been impacted either by fire or floods, that things haven't changed since 2017, and they're just, if anything, it's getting worse. There's a high turnover rate in EMBC, so there's no continuity. And I mean, the province is trying. I'll give them credit. They are trying. They're trying really hard. They're trying to navigate what this looks like. I mean, this is a disaster on a scale that nobody's ever seen before. I really lay a lot of the frustrations at the feet of the federal government. They can help us, and they're dragging their feet on it. And they need to come to the table and be a real partner in this, because our province has only got so much money, and the municipalities only got so much money, and the guys with the big purse strings aren't coming to the table as they should be, in my opinion. So, anyways. Yeah. Yep. They came back about a month ago? Was it that long ago? Maybe a little bit less. Yeah. So, anything else? Okay, we'll move on to correspondence receiving file. We have 8.1 through 8.4 with a recommendation that they be received in file. Councillor McLean, seconder. Councillor Gould, any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Correspondence action requested. I gotta put my glasses on. 9.1, a letter from Gordon and Patricia Como. CAO, do you want to speak to that, or?
Yeah, it's just a concern from citizen who have issues with cats, and just wondering if we could review some bylaws and talk about maybe licensing cats. So we're recommending that it be referred to our manager of protective services to investigate if it can be done, if not, what can be done with cats, or and we'll refer back to staff.
Okay, we have anybody have a question of that? Staff recommendation is that we send it to bylaw to have them look at it.
Make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Willis, seconder. Councilman McLean. Any other questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Could one of the cats wander in my place? I saw a moose out there.
How warm it was today. There's going to be lots out, I think, tonight.
Can you ask Lyle? Can you please ask?
9.2, Pickleball Association, CAO.
So I know that there was a point of clarification. They wanted to be a little bit more specific that the funding was actually committed and that site was selected. So we just wanted to bring it back to council. Council can discuss if they wanted to maybe do a motion and maybe tweak it a little bit and get a little more specific.
I can speak more on that. So the motion that was made, it is on live, where you can go back and hear it, and we had the discussion about it being in Memorial Park. And that, of course, it would be brought up to levels out of the floodplain, but somewhere in Memorial Park. And then we also had discussed that it got it in the budget for this year, $25,000, don't make it 50. In subject to them getting their further grant, right? We must give that much, but it would be subject to us adopting the bylaw. But because of the fact the group needs to have their application in well before March 1st, the deadline's March 1st. So they still have letters to write to regional district and prepare their full application. The letter needs to be a little bit more specific to go with what their original letter was. And although we had the discussions, it's not in motion. And I'll just read the letter that they had, that was attached to that bylaw, or to that that meeting. And there was 4 points. So the request was that the town will grant the Pickleball Association authority to proceed with the use of public land in Memorial Park to build pickleball courts. Needs to be written. And that the town will provide a funding commitment between the town and Princeton Pickleball for the provision of funding up to $25,000 to be included in the 2022 budget, subject to the Princeton Pickleball Association receiving funding from the co-op grant. The other 2 items are not on motion, so I would just like to make the recommendation to amend our motion to specifically say those 2 things. That we'll commit to, the town will commit to the use of public land at Memorial Park, and the town will provide a funding commitment for this year's budget in the amount of $25,000.
Chris swore that's what we said already.
That, I know, but it wasn't what was written in the motion, and it wasn't what was provided to the group, and we need that in their application, so,
No problem.
thank you.
So you want to read a motion? Is that a motion? Do you want to read the exact motion?
No, because I don't have it.
It's
I'm
in-
just,
it's-
I'm gonna take it from the
Yeah.
letter.
It was received January 17th.
Yeah.
It's attached on last agenda, or on the,
So were you making a motion?
yes, please, I'd like to make a motion to
Okay, can you read your motion? Well, we need a motion on the record. You can't just, because there's nothing written.
that we amend the motion. Let me find the original, where's
167.
today's,
167.
167.
So you're not going to amend that motion because that motion's already been passed.
Right.
So you have to make
But
a
I
new,
need the date.
but you need a new motion with the exact words that you want in it.
Okay. I'll say it again. And hopefully I didn't close it, and I closed it. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
Are you ready, Carrie?
Yeah.
That the town of Princeton will grant the Princeton Pickleball Association authority to proceed with the use of public land at Memorial Park to build pickleball courts.
Is that what's in the letter, is authority?
Yeah. And that the town will provide a funding commitment. It says between the town and the Princeton Pickleball Association for funding up to $25,000 to be included in the 2022 budget, subject to the Princeton Pickleball Association receiving funding from the co-op grant. And, you know, like, so that we don't have to do this every time, and that we would support the Princeton Pickleball Association in any future grant funding applications they may wish to write.
Well, I'm not
Well,
willing to go that far because,
commit that property to it.
well, we can commit the property, but I don't want to
'Cause
commit
the
the
letter-
financial commitment to it.
No, not financial. The letter,
So-
that we support the use of the land.
Their last application is costing us 25,000. So when you're saying we'll support any other application, are you gonna commit to?
No, not funding, it would be different, because some of the funding's zero.
That's what you're bringing into it.
No, I'm just saying. Sorry, their letter, Lyle wrote a letter back to them in January 2020, just saying that we'll commit a site in Memorial Park, and that he can include that with any letter and grant application.
I'm
fundraising.
fine with the first half. The last part
Okay.
I'm leery on because,
No, not funding,
We can do it at the time.
sure. But I just thought a new letter.
It's like a lot of our grants, when we apply for a grant, we have a commitment of, for ourselves. and
The
a lot of-
80% or 20%.
a lot of grant people.
Okay, sorry.
no, that's okay. I don't want to commit ourselves to something that we don't know about yet.
Yeah, sorry, that just confuses things. I meant to say, like, that letter that he had, that it carry on with that.
Okay. So you got the motion up, Gary?
Yeah.
With it.
I'm just gonna take it from the points from the letter, but yes.
Yes.
Do we have a seconder? to
I'll
the
second that,
motion?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Willis. Willis. Any questions or comments further?
Do we know when that is worded, that co-op grant?
I do not.
No.
The application starts, like, the process March 1st, but of course, everything's got to be in before that. And our budget isn't done until,
Probably the second council meeting in March.
Okay.
so it's,
Call the question.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, let's go to, carries. Bylaws and resolutions, 10.1, zoning bylaw amendment to create RS1 site-specific zone to amend the provisions of a major home occupation at 315 8th Avenue. Carried.
Thank you, Mr.
Should have had
Chair.
Mark come.
Mark introduced this bylaw to council at the January they do not need to authorize this bylaw, so that's what the amendment is. So I'm requesting third reading as amended. I've taken the signature line off that we had on there for administrative consultation.
Perfect.
And we did not receive any comments or concerns from neighboring property owners.
Excellent. Any questions, comments? Somebody make a motion. Councillor Gould, seconder. Councillor McLean. If no further comments, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Oh, yeah, if you want to. Okay, with that, 10.2, development cost charges, bylaw number 1015, 2022. Carrie?
Development cost charges, so this is the introduction of a new bylaw for DCCs for the town of Princeton. I'm requesting first and second reading of the bylaw, and then we'll move into a public consultation period where we'll advertise in the paper. We'll have the information that was provided to council from Sean Curry. His PowerPoint will also be on our website. I will have a handout for staff to give to any new developers or builders that are coming in to get building permits or inquiries. And then I'm proposing to bring it back to council for March 21st. Yes.
Councillor McLean?
I was under the understanding that upper level government is wondering why we haven't done this a long time ago.
That is correct. I believe we're probably one of the only municipalities in BC that does not have development cost charges in place, and they are strongly recommending that we do.
Yeah.
I would therefore love to make the motion.
Thank you. Okay, so that's Councillor McLean and Councillor Gould. Any further comments? I know you're wincing, Gary, but we were told pretty clearly by the Premier, by, who else was it? Municipal Affairs, I believe. There was like 3 or 4 ministers told us pretty much, get your house in order.
Since we were elected.
Yeah.
Since we came into office, that's been something that.
Yep.
Have them in place before our review of this, have them in place.
Yeah.
So any future time.
Yeah. Okay, all in favor? Carried unanimously. Come on in, Tyler. Okay, 10.3, 2022 to 2026 financial plan bylaw. James,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
can you make it as fun as Jim's?
I won't,
And you got 15
I'll
minutes.
make it
Go.
shorter than Jim's. How about that? So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am pleased to bring to council's consideration tonight for first and second reading the Town of Princeton financial bylaw for 2022. It was a long time coming. As you probably know, I plan to introduce the Town of Princeton financial plan on the council meeting on November the 15th, 2021. And unfortunately, the day before, we had a major catastrophic flood. That council meeting was canceled, and pretty much so was my budget. So, finance was basically preoccupied with the Emergency Operations Center all the way through November. December, we started taking a look a little bit more at recovery and sort of the different projects that would entail, and really kind of put it together for a council update that we had a special meeting of council for in January, and then and that led us to today. Essentially, there will be a separate amendment to the 2021 financial plan. We didn't quite make the deadline for this meeting, so Finance will introduce that for 3 readings on the meeting on February 22nd. The 2022 one is put forward, largely was the same as was going to be debated on November the 15th. It proposed roughly, I'm working off of memory now. It proposed, hang on one second. Yeah, it proposed about a $5 million capital plan and a roughly $15 million expenditure budget on a $15 million revenue plan. This financial plan includes an additional $26 million of potential public works, specifically related to the flood, including rebuilding of dikes. It includes infrastructure repairs, so infrastructure has really no concept of what the thawing of the ground is going to do in the spring to roads, water, and sewer infrastructure. If they all decide to fail at once in the spring when everything melts, things will shift underground, and we need to be prepared for the financial plan for that. We have directional drilling projects, we have sewer replacements, we have the original $7 million infrastructure project that's included in that. So the budget that is proposed at the moment includes $32 million of capital works. The vast majority of that is paid for with Emergency Management BC money, as was described before in the well 1 and 2 replacement project. A large portion, $26 million, is what we'll be seeking in various ways, shapes, and forms from the provincial government. Again, large portion of that is disaster financial assistance. So we have ongoing discussions with the Provincial Ministry of Municipal Affairs, Provincial Ministry of Finance, trying to figure out how that other 20% funding gap is going to be closed. We also have up to $2.1 million of operational flood mitigation costs. Those are direct response costs that were not quite covered in 2021. They're ongoing works, ongoing operational costs that we expect to be incurred in 2022 in relation to the flood. We have a full response measurement going on there with several staff members participating in various recovery methods, everything from helping to replace residents and helping to rebuild their homes, to restoring the infrastructure that was damaged in the flood, to helping to rebuild dikes and capital works, to helping to make a permanent home for public works. There's several different projects that are ongoing right now that will require financial resources potentially in the future. The operational costs we expect to be 100% covered through the provincial response of Emergency Management BC, or PREOC. And those are also included in the budget for that. So the budget is presented. We'd ask that council approve the budget for first and second reading. If that budget is approved for first and second reading, Finance will then present a presentation similar to last year, where we present each departmental budget and give a overall presentation of how the financial plan for the town of Princeton will be implemented for 2022, tax increases, all the details that are included within the financial plan. We'd come back to staff would come back to council for the first meeting in March to ask for third reading with the results of that financial plan public consultation. And if there were no major objections or no major amendments to the budget, we would expect the budget for the town of Princeton to be passed at the second council meeting, regular council meeting in March. So I'm also open to questions from council on the financial plan.
Any questions?
Councilor Gould.
In Schedule C, I was looking, just quickly going through it, and one of the things I see about the Memorial Park concession roof is it says $50,000. The source of funding is 100% from a capital grant from the RDOS and the remainder from current year taxation.
So with 100% grant funding, we wouldn't have any current year taxation.
Is that just a typo?
I probably forgot to leave.
And then, the regional district arena improvement project, that was like $1 million. Wasn't that pretty much all supposed to be, grant funded?
It's, that is 73.3% grant funded.
Okay.
Our portion was, 220,000. And we'll be sharing that with you.
We also have an arena reserve for that as well.
Right, it just said general taxation there.
Yeah. There's several sources of funding, so the amount that would be covered through current year taxation would be relatively minimal.
Okay, I just think that it's gonna make it look like it's general taxation twice in that one for.
Yeah, you're right.
Any other questions? Councilor
Going
McLean?
back a bit, I see, going back to the water replacement thing, on the $7 million infrastructure upgrade borrowing, our share would be 1.2 million. Percentage is what, 10% or something that we have to pay, or 15%?
I believe it's again 73 and 27. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
That
Unless we
seems
get-
to be that
unless we
seems to be
get
the
the
key
other-
metric that's shared with the federal government. So.
If we get it through emergency management, then it would be 80/20, so we're hoping we get that one.
Sorry, one more question. The page 245, it says for Memorial Park, 50,000 expenditure to study the layout and create a plan for Memorial Park, source of funding, future amenities. Is that the recreation study that we talked about? Okay.
That's the park layout, so if we're gonna put the pickleball court and all that there, we
Right.
have to come up with a
So
plan.
it's not just the full recreation, okay.
No, it's just that.
The
Just-
pickleball court is also included in there separately.
Yeah,
The
no, I
full
thought we were
recreation.
looking at a
A full recreation plan was not in this year's budget. We couldn't have it
50 is just for,
just for that park.
oh, wow,
Yeah, it's expensive.
because the 1968 one is not. But that's good, okay.
We can dust that off.
Yeah,
That's
we
pretty
could dust
cool.
it off.
Yeah, no, that was a pretty cool one.
Thanks.
If there's no other questions, does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Councillor Gould is making the staff recommended motion. Councillor McLean is seconding it. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now it's all on you, James. Put some like, pizzazz in the presentation
Maybe
this
some
year.
background music. Yeah, I'll see what I can do.
2 hours of budget is.
Yes.
Thank you. We will go to motion to close. Recommendation that the meeting be closed to the public for the purpose of considering the following: 90.1E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council considers the disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. Thank you, Councilor Willis. Seconder, Councilor McLean. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Good night, everybody out there.